The sky above Kepler-9 burned like a furnace, choked with ash and smoke. Through the skeletal remains of a once thriving alien metropolis, four figures in fractured combat armor moved silently, rifles raised, every step taken as if the ground itself might betray them. The city had been the jewel of the Zeraphis civilization, spiraling towers grown from stone and crystal, streets paved with luminous minerals, gardens that sang when the wind brushed through them. Now those towers leaned like broken teeth, the streets cratered, the gardens smoldering husks. War had turned this place into a graveyard. Elias Kale crouched against a collapsed wall that still radiated the heat of a blast. His helmet's visor flickered with static, the comms connection weak this deep in the ruins. He breathed carefully, each inhale laced with the acrid sting of ozone. 3 years of war, and yet moments like this still carried the same edge of unreality. This was not the world humans had expected to conquer, nor the one they'd expected to die on. "Sector ahead looks clear," whispered Mara Vera, her dark eyes scanning the rubble. Her voice was taut, honed by endless nights under fire. She had survived more battles than most of their company combined, and she carried that experience like armor heavier than steel. On the left flank, Rin Calder adjusted his scope. Calm, measured, his posture always steady, Rin was the kind of soldier who made chaos seem organized. "Nothing moving on my side," he murmured. "Same here," crackled the voice of Kiran Salas, the youngest among them. Barely past 20, yet already hardened by the things he had seen. His hands were steady, but his words always carried the tremor of someone aware that death waited at every corner. Elias raised his rifle, the blackened barrel aligned with the skeletal shapes ahead. "Command wants confirmation," he said quietly into the squad channel. "If the Zeraphis are planning another push against the southern base, this is where the trail starts." They advanced through what had once been a marketplace. Stalls lay shattered, the alien equivalents of fruits and woven crafts scattered across the ground, now brittle with decay. Elias slowed, gloved fingers brushing over an object half buried in the dust, a child's toy, carved from translucent crystal, its edges worn smooth by small hands that would never return. He set it down carefully, feeling the weight of invisible eyes on him. Mara halted abruptly, raising one fist. "Hear that?" she whispered. The team froze. Elias strained to listen. Through the wail of distant engines and the groaning bones of ruined buildings, another sound filtered through, faint, trembling voices. Not guttural like soldiers barking orders. Higher, thinner, laced with fear. Inside that structure, Mara pointed toward a building whose roof sagged inward like a dying lung. Its walls, grown once with elegant curves, were now cracked and trembling with each distant detonation. "Could be a trap," Rin said firmly, but his hand was already tightening on his weapon. Kiran shook his head, nervous. "Not our mission. We need to keep moving." Elias stayed still, listening again. The voices weren't soldiers. They carried the unmistakable rhythm of desperation. And somewhere beneath them, another sound, choked breathing, pained. He gestured to the others. "Cover me." "Commander," Mara hissed, but Elias was already moving, rifle ready, boots crunching softly across debris. He crept to the side of the fractured building, finding a gap where a wall had crumbled away. Through it, shapes stirred. At first, only shadows. Then his vision cleared, and he saw them. A group of Zeraphis civilians huddled near the wreckage of a collapsed beam. 2 elders strained against the debris, trying to free someone pinned beneath it. And beside them, pressed close to the fractured floor, was a young woman. Her skin shimmered a muted violet, catching stray rays of burning sunlight and turning them to faint glimmers. Her hair, long, silver-white, like strands of frost fire, clung to her cheeks where sweat and dust had matted it. Her eyes, luminous pools of blue streaked with metallic silver, locked on his as though she had been waiting. For an instant, the war fell silent. Elias blinked. The Zeraphis were his enemies. For 3 years, he had been trained to pull the trigger without hesitation. Yet what he saw was not a monster. It was a girl, wounded, terrified, her arm twisted beneath the rubble. She couldn't have been much older than himself. One of the elders hissed, stepping in front of her, arms outstretched, skin rippling with colors that Elias had learned to recognize as anger or fear. They spoke rapidly in their alien tongue, words he couldn't understand but emotions he felt in his bones. Protect her. Keep her safe. Elias lowered his rifle slightly. I'm not here to hurt you, he muttered, though the words were wasted. Then the ground shook. A distant roar swelled overhead as human bombers streaked across the sky. Too early. Air support had jumped the schedule. Elias, pull back. Mara's voice cut sharp across the comm, they're about to level that block. The first explosion struck 2 streets away. The building around Elias shuddered violently, dust pouring from the fractured ceiling. The elders screamed, dragging 2 others toward a side exit. But the silver-haired girl, she couldn't move. The rubble held her fast. Elias' instincts screamed to retreat. To survive. His squad was already falling back, pulling into safer ground. He looked to the girl again. She stared back, eyes wide, lips parted in soundless plea. Another explosion struck closer. The walls cracked. Pieces of ceiling splintered loose. The girl tried to pull herself free, but each effort only worsened her pain. Time slowed. Elias thought of his orders. Of the faces of comrades he'd lost. Of what it meant to be human, to fight for survival. And then, he thought of her. Of how those eyes mirrored every child he had seen screaming in burning colonies, every friend he had failed to save. He dropped his rifle. Kale! Get out of there! Rin shouted through static. But Elias was already moving. He sprinted into the collapsing chamber, shoved debris off the girl with a surge of strength born of desperation, and dragged her into his arms. She cried out, half in pain, half in shock, but he held her close, shielding her body beneath his own. The next bomb landed. The building screamed. Stone and metal cascaded like an avalanche. Elias wrapped himself tighter around her, bracing for the inevitable. The ceiling gave way. Agony erupted through his body as steel and stone crashed down, bones breaking, skin tearing. Heat seared across his face where energy conduits burst apart. He could barely breathe under the weight pressing him into the floor. But the girl, her body remained shielded beneath his. He felt her trembling, heard her soft, alien cries muffled against his chest. Darkness closed in. His heartbeat slowed. The war, the mission, even his squad's frantic calls over the radio, all of it faded. The last sensation Elias Kale carried into unconsciousness was her hand, cool, delicate, brushing against his, clinging with desperate trust. He had saved her. Whatever happened next, that was enough. Elias Kale awoke to the sensation of drowning. The world was liquid, blue and heavy, filling his lungs and pressing against his skin. He thrashed instinctively, panic exploding in his chest, until he realized he could breathe. The liquid wasn't suffocating him, it was sustaining him. His body floated weightless, encased in warmth that soothed the sharp edges of his pain. He forced his eyes open. Vision blurred at first, then sharpened into strange curves and flowing light. He was inside a transparent chamber filled with viscous fluid, tubes running from his arms into pulsating nodes of alien design. Beyond the glass, a room stretched outward, walls that shimmered as if alive, glowing veins of pale green and gold pulsing like heartbeats. He wasn't in a human field hospital. A shadow passed across his vision. Elias stilled, breath shallow. From the haze emerged a figure, tall, graceful, almost too fluid to belong to flesh. Silver skin rippled like oil across water, long limbs moving with dancer's precision. Eyes vast and black, speckled with pinpricks of starlight, studied him with a calm intensity. Her voice, when it came, resonated like wind through crystal. Kaval Nira, brave one. Elias flinched. Then, to his shock, her next words arrived in flawless English. "You are safe now." He tried to speak, but only bubbles left his mouth. She seemed to understand. Her long fingers pressed a control panel, and the chamber began to drain. The blue liquid receded through hidden channels, leaving him gasping on his knees as cool air rushed in. The chamber hissed open. "Do not stand yet," the woman said. "Your body remembers pain. Let it pass." Elias sagged against the chamber's edge. He expected agony, the broken leg, the crushed ribs, the burns. But instead there was only a dull ache, and strange silver patterns etched faintly across his skin. They pulsed with light, fading slowly like embers. What did you do to me?" His voice was raw, rasping. "We saved you," she replied simply. "Your injuries were fatal by human medicine. But Zarathus' healing is older, deeper. We wove machines small as dust into your blood. They knit bone, rewove nerve, repaired what should never have healed." Her gaze softened, though her expression remained unreadable to human eyes. "You should not have survived. But you chose to, for one of ours." Elias blinked, memory crashing back, the bombs, the collapse, the girl with violet skin and silver hair. He sat up abruptly. "Where is she?" "The one eye." "She lives," the alien woman said. "Because of you." The chamber's door shifted, opening like a petal. Another figure entered, smaller, more fragile. She was exactly as he remembered. Skin of pale violet, luminous in the filtered light. Hair like cascading snow, still dusted with grit but clean now, braided loosely over one shoulder. Her arm, once mangled, was bound in a sheath of living crystal that pulsed softly as it healed her. Eyes bright with silver blue swirls widened as they fell on him. Elias froze. He didn't know what he had expected, fear, perhaps, or distrust. Instead, the girl stepped forward slowly, almost reverently. "This is my daughter," the elder woman said, her voice quieter now. "Her name is Lyrian. You carried her from the rubble. You gave her life back." Lyrian's lips parted. A tremor passed across her features, and then she spoke in her own tongue, soft notes like music spun through glass. Elias didn't understand the words, but he understood the emotion. Gratitude. Awe. The elder placed a hand gently on Lyrian's shoulder. "I am Matriarch Solara, keeper of this house, voice of my people. You know me as enemy. But to us, you are something else." Elias tried to stand again, testing his leg. To his surprise, it bore weight. His body felt strange, too light, almost unfamiliar. He looked from Solara to Lyrian, then back again. "Why?" he demanded. "Why save me? I'm your enemy. I'm the reason your city burned." Solara's skin shifted color, warm gold flowing through silver. "Because you saved what I love most in all worlds. My daughter." Lyrian took a step closer. Hesitant, she extended her hand. Elias stared at it, the contrast stark, his scarred, calloused palm, her smooth violet fingers. He hesitated. Then, slowly, he let her touch him. Her hand was cool, soft, trembling with unspoken words. She smiled faintly, and something in Elias' chest tightened. He had expected to feel guilt, or shame. Instead, he felt connection. Solara spoke again. 3 years I have seen humans bring fire to our soil. I believed your kind capable only of destruction. Then you chose to protect rather than kill. You broke the cycle, if only for a moment." She lowered her head slightly, an almost regal bow. "That moment matters. Enough that I would offer you something impossible." Elias frowned. "What do you mean?" Solara's dark eyes reflected his own face. "I would make you kin. My daughter calls you her shield brother already. I would make it truth. Stay among us, Elias Kale. Take a place in this house. In this people. You would never return to war. You would never be alone again. The room stilled. Lyrian's eyes lifted to his, filled with fragile hope. Elias' throat worked, dry. His mind screamed with conflict. His squad likely thought him dead. His commanders would call this betrayal. His people would brand him traitor. But Lyrian's hand clung to his, warm despite its tremor. She was alive because of him. And he was alive because of her. His voice faltered. He could not answer. Not yet. Solara inclined her head. Then take time. You will heal here. You will see who we are. When you are ready, you will choose. But know this, Elias Kale, whatever you decide, you are bound to us now. You saved her, and in doing so, you became part of us. Lyrian squeezed his hand gently, her silver hair falling like a veil across her shoulder. Her eyes never left his. Elias exhaled slowly, the weight of war pressing down heavier than any collapsed building. He had thought the hardest choice was to stay behind in the rubble. He was wrong. The hardest choice lay ahead. Elias Kale awoke the next morning to light that did not belong to war. The walls of his chamber glowed with soft hues, alive with veins of color that pulsed like the breath of a living organism. The bed beneath him was not metal or cloth, but something grown, smooth, organic, shifting subtly to match the contours of his body. It felt unsettling at first, like being held in the palm of a giant hand. And yet, it was comfortable in a way he had never known. Sunlight streamed through crystalline windows, scattering into prisms across the floor. Beyond them stretched a city he had not imagined possible. The ruins he had seen before were only one side of Kepler 9, here, the capital of the Zeraphis still thrived. Towers rose like spirals of seashells, bridges arched like frozen rivers of glass, and gardens spilled down terraces in cascades of glowing foliage. The city seemed less built than grown, organic, seamless, alive. Good morning. The voice was melodic, chiming, and when Elias turned, Lyrian stood in the doorway. She carried a tray, though it looked less like wood or metal and more like woven crystal, its surface glowing faintly. On it were fruits that shimmered softly as though lit from within, bread that glistened like honey, and a drink that shifted colors as though stirred by invisible hands. Her violet skin caught the sunlight, turning her edges to radiant lavender. Silver-white hair flowed loose today, brushing her shoulders like strands of moonlight. Elias swallowed without meaning to. You should eat, she said in halting English. The words were slightly stiff, but her tone was gentle. It will make you stronger. Elias hesitated. Is it safe for me? Lyrian tilted her head, expression unreadable in that alien way, then gave a soft laugh that sounded like bells. Safe. Yes. Made, for you. She set the tray down before him and folded gracefully onto the seat that unfurled from the wall. Elias picked up one of the glowing fruits. Its surface pulsed faintly against his fingers, as though alive. He bit into it carefully. Sweetness flooded his tongue, like strawberries, but sharper, tinged with something he couldn't name. Warmth spread through his body instantly, soothing his muscles. He took another bite before catching himself, glancing at Lyrian. She was watching intently, her silver-blue eyes bright, lips curved in the faintest smile. It is good, she said softly. He nodded. Better than anything I've eaten in years. They ate in silence for a time, though Lyrian occasionally spoke, pointing to each food and naming it in her language. Elias repeated the sounds awkwardly, his accent heavy, which made her laugh. It had been so long since he had heard laughter without cruelty or bitterness that it startled him. When the meal was done, Matriarch Solara entered, her presence filling the chamber. She moved with an authority that needed no words, silver skin shifting with undertones of gold as her eyes assessed Elias. You are stronger already, she said. Good. Today you will walk our city. Elias hesitated. Why? To show me what I'll never have. Solara regarded him evenly. To show you what you saved. Come. They left the chamber together. Lyrian walked at his side, her fingers brushing his arm once or twice as though to steady him, though Elias suspected it was more comfort than necessity. The city was alive with Zeraphis of every shade, silver, violet, azure. Children darted through luminous gardens, chasing small floating creatures that resembled jellyfish spun from glass. Merchants displayed wares that shimmered with inner light. Artists carved sculptures that shifted shape as one looked at them. Everywhere Elias turned, he saw not soldiers or enemies, but people. The Zeraphis stared at him as he passed. Some eyes were wary, others curious, and a few openly hostile. Yet none attacked. He was an anomaly, a human walking among them without chains. Most of my people know humans only as destroyers, Solara said quietly as they crossed a bridge that arched high above the city. They see your kind in fire and blood. But you, they see something different. Elias looked down at the streets below. A pair of children pointed at him, whispering to each other. One reached for the other's hand nervously, as though he were both threat and wonder. They shouldn't see me as anything, Elias muttered. I'm not special. He trailed off. How could he explain that he hadn't thought? That in that collapsing building, he had acted without reason, only instinct? You chose, Solara said simply. And choices shape worlds. They came to a garden suspended above the city, its leaves glowing like jewels. Lyrian knelt near a bed of luminous flowers, coaxing a bud open with careful fingers. She plucked one and offered it to Elias. The blossom pulsed against his skin, and suddenly he felt her memory. Terror in the rubble, his body shielding hers, the rush of survival. The flower held not just beauty, but a piece of her heart. He drew in a shaky breath. What is this? A memory blossom, Lyrian whispered. It keeps a moment alive. Now you carry mine. Elias looked at her, truly looked. The way her eyes glowed like stars captured in water. The way her smile wavered with vulnerability. The strange, undeniable warmth he felt when she stood close. He should not have felt it, this was the enemy, the daughter of their matriarch. And yet, here it was. Solara's gaze lingered on them, her expression unreadable. She has not laughed since the war began, she said quietly. Until now. That evening, they sat in Solara's private chambers overlooking the city. Elias spoke of his home, of mountains and oceans on earth, of the smell of pine after rain. Lyrian listened with wide eyes, leaning forward like a child hearing a bedtime story. When she asked about his family, silence fell. They're gone, Elias said at last, voice low. The war took them. One way or another, it took everyone. Lyrian reached across the table, her violet hand covering his. Her eyes reflected pain he recognized, loss beyond words, the wound of war carried by all who lived through it. You are not alone, she said softly. For a long moment, neither moved. The war, the blood, the weight of betrayal, it all seemed far away. There was only the girl with silver hair and violet skin, and the soldier who should have left her to die. And in that stillness, Elias Kale realized with a shiver that his heart had already made a choice his mind had not caught up to. The alarms came at dawn. Elias Kale woke to the sound of sirens that pulsed through the walls like living heartbeats. Outside his chamber, the city's sky burned crimson, not from sunrise, but from streaks of fire tracing across the horizon. Human ships. He recognized the engines instantly. Lyrian burst into the room, her silver hair unbound, violet skin flushed with fear. They come, she said in broken English, her voice tight. Your people, here. Elias rose from the bed, heart hammering. A rescue mission, he muttered. Eric. His oldest friend would never have accepted his disappearance as death. Captain Eric Venn was out there, cutting through Zerafis' defenses to find him. But what would he see when he arrived? Elias alive, living under the roof of the matriarch, standing at the side of her daughter. The thought twisted in his chest like a knife. The door swept open. Solara entered, her skin flashing shades of alarmed red. "The council has ruled," she said grimly. "Warlord Theric has convinced many you are a threat. They come to seize you, to execute you before your kind can take you back." Elias' stomach turned. "And you? What do you want me to do?" Solara's dark eyes held his. "I would see you live. I would see you remain with us. I have prepared a ship. Small, hidden. We can flee to the outer colonies where the council cannot touch us." Elias shook his head. "That would make you a fugitive. You'd lose everything." "You gave up your life for my daughter," Solara said evenly. "I will give up mine for you, if I must." Before he could respond, the chamber doors exploded inward. Warlord Theric strode in, massive even by Zerafis standards. His skin was dark iron, scarred, and his eyes glowed like embers. 6 soldiers followed, rifles trained on Elias. "Step aside, matriarch," Theric growled. "By order of the council, the human dies here." Solara moved instantly, placing herself between Elias and the soldiers. Her voice was sharp enough to cut stone. "You will not touch him. Then you will fall with him," Theric snarled. Before any could act, Lyrian rushed forward, throwing her arms around Elias' waist. "No," she cried, her voice breaking. "He is my shield, he saved me." The soldiers faltered, uncertain. But Theric only darkened, his skin rippling with violent hues. "Get the girl away from him," he barked. And then, the walls shook. The sound of human aircraft roared overhead, closer than ever. Blasts rattled the foundations. A window shattered as a dropship descended, its engines burning through the dawn mist. From its side, ropes unfurled, and soldiers rappelled down in a practiced flurry. Elias' heart stuttered. He knew that armor, that insignia. And then he saw the face. "Jake!" Eric Venn's voice rang out across the chamber, raw relief, disbelief, and triumph all in one. He dropped onto the balcony, weapon raised, followed by Sergeant Naira Cade and 4 others. "You're alive," Eric breathed. "Thank God. We're here to get you out." Elias barely had time to react before both sides aimed weapons. The Zerafis soldiers leveled rifles at the intruders, the humans aimed straight back. Theric's voice thundered, "Kill them all." "Wait!" Elias shouted, throwing himself into the middle. Rifles, human and Zerafis, pivoted instantly toward him. He stood in the crossfire, breathing hard, arms raised. "Nobody fires." "Elias, get down." Eric barked. "They've got you prisoner." "They saved my life." Elias roared back. "These people, Solara, Lyrian, they kept me alive when I should have died. They're not my captors. They're my family." The room froze. Lyrian's arms tightened around him, her face buried against his chest. Solara stood tall, unwavering. Theric seethed, his soldiers ready to fire. And Elias could see the confusion and fury battling in his eyes. "What the hell are you saying?" Eric demanded. "These things are the enemy." Elias met his gaze, steady. "They're not things. They're people. Families. Children. Look at her, Eric." He angled slightly, letting Eric see Lyrian. Her violet skin trembled with fear, her silver hair falling across tear-streaked cheeks. "She's not a soldier. She's not a monster. She's just someone who wanted to live. The same as us." Eric hesitated, lowering his weapon a fraction. His eyes softened as he took in Lyrian's terrified grip. She's just a girl. Exactly, Elias said. And how many more like her have we buried under rubble because we couldn't see past the word enemy? Theric snarled, stepping forward. Enough of this. He raised his arm, signaling his soldiers. Humans understand only war. End this now. But Solara's voice cracked like thunder. Stand down. The soldiers froze. Even Theric blinked at her tone. Elias seized the moment. He looked from Eric to Solara, from Theric to the human squad. We're all ready to kill. Every one of us. To fight, to burn, to bury children because it's easier than seeing them. But what if there's another way? His voice carried across the chamber, raw, unpolished, but burning with conviction. What if, instead of killing, we exchanged? What if human children lived with Zeraphis families, and Zeraphis children lived with humans? What if we let them grow together, before they're old enough to hate? Before they're old enough to kill? The word struck like lightning. Silence followed. Every weapon trembled, every hand unsure. That's insane, Eric muttered, though his tone lacked the certainty it should have carried. Madness, Theric spat. But there was less fire in his voice now, more uncertainty. Elias turned slowly, letting them all see his face. His scars, his wounds, the faint silver lines still etched into his skin. Maybe madness is what we need. Because the alternative is more of this. More rubble. More graves. More children screaming beneath falling buildings. Lyrian looked up at him, her silver blue eyes wide with hope. She tugged on his sleeve, whispering in her language. Solara translated softly, her own skin glowing faintly gold. She says she wants to meet human children. She wants to know if they laugh like she does. The chamber held its breath. Elias looked at Eric. You came to save me, brother. Let me save something bigger. Let me try. Eric's grip on his rifle faltered. His eyes flickered to Lyrian, to Solara, to Elias. Slowly, almost painfully, he lowered the weapon. You'd better be right about this, he whispered. Around them, weapons dipped. Even Theric did not give the final order. The balance was fragile, but for the first time since the war began, it tilted away from blood. Elias exhaled, heart pounding. He had placed himself in the center of two armies and spoken of impossible peace. And somehow, impossibility had not yet been shot dead. 6 months later, the ruins of Kepler 9 still smoked at the edges of the horizon, but inside one rebuilt district, something new was taking root. In a hall grown from living crystal and steel, laughter echoed. Not the hollow, brittle sound of soldiers trying to forget the war, but the real laughter of children. Half of them were human. Young colonists sent from outlying settlements. The other half were Zeraphis, violet-skinned, silver-haired youths whose eyes gleamed with curiosity. Together they sat in circles on the floor, building strange hybrid contraptions that looked like half spaceship, half living organism. At the center, Elias Kale stood with a watchful eye, guiding them. His scars were still visible, and faint silver threads of Zeraphis healing still shimmered faintly on his skin, but he looked different now. Not just a soldier. Not just a survivor. Something else, something that belonged to both worlds. Try it like this, he said gently, crouching beside two children. A human girl named Sophie was showing a Zeraphis boy how to shape a metal frame. The boy's fingers were careful, delicate, more used to coaxing life from crystals than bending steel. Sophie grinned. You're getting it. The boy chirped in his melodic tongue, and then blew gently on the frame. The metal rippled, shifting its structure into something sturdier. Sophie gasped. Elias chuckled. That's the beauty of working together, he said. She brings strength, he brings fluidity. You see? Stronger than either alone. On the other side of the room, a group of children were singing. A human child plucked at a small instrument, a salvaged guitar, tuned crudely but functional. A Zeraphis girl answered with her voice, harmonizing in tones that shimmered like glass under sunlight. The two sounds wound around each other, fragile yet whole. Lyrian stood nearby, watching. She was taller now, or perhaps Elias simply noticed her differently. Her violet skin glowed with health, her silver hair falling like a river of light. She moved with the grace of her people, yet when she laughed with the children, something in her laughter was wholly human, unguarded, joyous, warm. When she caught Elias looking, she smiled. For a moment, the hall seemed quieter. The experiment had been born from madness. At first, both councils, human and Zeraphis, had rejected it. The idea of exchanging children, of letting them live in the homes of the enemy, seemed like blasphemy. But Elias had stood before them, scarred and stubborn, with Lyrian at his side. He told them what it had meant to hold her in the rubble, to shield her when he should have left her behind. He told them what it had meant to wake in a Zeraphis home, to realize that love of family looked the same no matter the shape of the hands that gave it. And somehow, impossibility bent. Now, the hall thrummed with proof. Human children and Zeraphis youths ate together, studied together, played together. They learned languages side by side, traded songs, and swapped memories. The cycle of hate cracked, not shattered, not gone, but cracked enough to let light in. That evening, after the children had been dismissed to their host families, Elias lingered by the wide window. The city glowed beneath him, towers shimmering in the night air. He felt Lyrian step up beside him, close enough that her shoulder brushed his. "You did this," she said quietly. Her English had grown smoother, accented but fluent. Elias shook his head. "We did this. If it weren't for you, I'd have never believed it was possible." She studied him, her silver blue eyes reflecting the stars. "Do you regret it? Staying here? Not going back to your people?" The question pierced him, because the truth was complicated. He missed Eric, missed the sound of human voices unbroken by translation. But when he thought of war, of orders to burn and destroy, he felt only weariness. When he thought of Lyrian, he felt something else, something fierce, unspoken, undeniable. "No," he said finally, softly. "I don't regret it." Her hand found his. This time, he didn't hesitate. The memory of war had not vanished. In the council chambers, Theric still spat warnings of betrayal, still argued that peace was an illusion. On the human side, voices demanded the return of their soldier, claimed Elias had been brainwashed. But outside those chambers, the laughter of children echoed. And laughter was harder to silence than guns. Elias Kale had once thought his story ended in a collapsing building, his body broken over an enemy's child. Instead, it had led here, standing on the edge of something unthinkable, hand in hand with the girl he had once sworn to kill. The war was not over. Perhaps it would never truly end. But as the night settled over Kepler 9, Elias believed something stronger than war had been born in the ruins. And for the first time in years, he believed it might last. So that was the story of Elias Kale, the soldier who chose to protect rather than destroy, and the choice that reshaped not just his life, but the lives of two civilizations. From the ashes of a ruined city came something no bomb could build, trust. And from the bond between a soldier and a violet-skinned girl with silver hair came the first fragile bridge toward peace. When we look back on war stories, it's easy to count the weapons, the battles, the victories and losses. But sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't a rifle or a fleet, it's the refusal to fire, the courage to shield, and the madness to imagine a future beyond blood. Elias was called a traitor, a hero, a madman, and a savior. In truth, he was just a man who made one impossible choice and never let go of it. And Lyrian, she wasn't just someone he saved. She was the reason he discovered that war could be broken by connection, that even enemies could stand side by side, and that maybe the future didn't have to repeat the past. This story isn't about endings, it's about beginnings. Beginnings forged from rubble, laughter rising where once there were screams, and children who may never see each other as enemies again. If you enjoyed this journey into the ruins of Kepler-9, do me a favor, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next story. Hit that like button if Elias and Lyrian's bond gave you hope, and most importantly, share this video with someone who still believes that even in the darkest times, there's always a chance for peace. Because maybe, just maybe, all it takes is one choice.